The fire was still burning when Ethan Brooks arrived. The alien ship had torn through the desert sky and buried itself in Arizona's sand, leaving a crater that glowed with strange blue light. He was the closest medic, 30 miles out on a routine supply run, and protocol said wait for the military. But the distress beacon was screaming, and Ethan had never been good at waiting. He grabbed his kit and ran toward the wreckage. Inside the twisted metal hull, he found her. The Vel'thari woman was pinned beneath a collapsed support beam, her silver skin streaked with luminescent blood. But her arms were raised, shielding a small bundle. The infant was barely moving, her breathing shallow and weak. The mother's eyes met his, desperate and fading. She whispered something in her language, then went still. Ethan checked for a pulse and found none. The child had, maybe, minutes. He pulled the infant free and laid her on the ground. Vel'thari biology was close enough to human, close enough that the emergency xenomedical protocols existed for a reason. But her blood type was rare, and Ethan had no compatible plasma in his kit. He looked at his own arm. The training said never do this. Cross-species contamination, legal complications, unknown reactions. But the baby was dying, and he was the only one here. He inserted the needle and started the transfusion. His blood flowed into her tiny veins, and after 30 agonizing seconds, her color began to return. Her chest rose and fell with stronger breaths. He had saved her life. That was when the mother's hand grabbed his wrist. Ethan jumped back, heart hammering. She was alive, barely, her breath rattling in her chest. She looked at the IV line connecting his arm to her daughter, and her expression shifted from relief to something that looked like horror. She spoke again, the translator, chip in his ear, finally catching up. You gave her your blood. You bound her. Then her grip loosened, and she was gone. Within the hour, the Vel'thari rescue team arrived. They were efficient and cold, their tall forms moving through the wreckage like shadows. They found Ethan sitting beside the infant, the transfusion complete. One of them, an official with deep purple markings on his face, scanned the child and went completely rigid. Human, what have you done? Ethan explained the emergency, the dying mother, the transfusion. The official looked at him with something between pity and disgust. You have claimed this child by blood debt. She is yours now. By our oldest law, she belongs to your family line. Ethan stared. That's insane. I saved her life. I'm not taking someone's kid. The official's voice was flat. The mother is dead. The law is absolute. Lifeblood shared is lineage claimed. You are now her guardian. We will deliver her to you within 3 days. They took the child and left. Ethan reported everything to his superiors, who immediately buried him in legal paperwork and xenocultural briefings. The Vel'thari were an allied species, newly integrated into the Galactic Coalition. Their laws were respected under interstellar treaty, and Ethan had, however accidentally, triggered one of their most sacred traditions. There was no way out. The infant, named Lira, arrived at his apartment in Phoenix 72 hours later, delivered by a Vel'thari cultural attaché and a human social worker, who both looked deeply uncomfortable. Ethan was handed a data tablet with care instructions, legal custody forms, and a terse message from the Vel'thari Council. The bond was permanent. What they didn't tell him was that Lira's mother had survived. Serah had been in critical condition but stabilized at a Vel'thari medical facility in orbit. When she woke and learned what had happened, she demanded to see her daughter. The council refused. The blood debt was sacred. The human had saved Lira with his own life essence. By Vel'thari law, he was now her father, and Serah had no legal claim. She was permitted to send gifts, to watch from a distance, but never to hold her child again. Serah didn't accept it. She came to Earth, to Phoenix, and stood outside Ethan's apartment building every day. He saw her through the window, a tall silver figure standing motionless in the desert heat, her eyes fixed on the 6th floor. He tried to talk to her once, stepping outside with Lira in his arms. Serah took one look at her daughter and collapsed, sobbing in a language Ethan couldn't understand. The translator gave him fragments. My heart, my light, stolen. Ethan couldn't take it anymore. He contacted the Vel'thari Council directly and demanded a meeting. They agreed, cold and formal. He stood in a sterile white chamber aboard their orbital station, facing 5 robed figures who looked at him like an insect. "This is wrong," Ethan said. "I don't care about your traditions. That woman is dying down there. She needs her daughter." The lead counselor, an ancient Vel'thari named Torin, shook his head slowly. "You do not understand. The blood debt is not cruelty. It is survival. For millennia, our people were scattered across dying worlds. Lifeblood shared meant family chosen, bonds stronger than birth. To break this law is to break our identity." Ethan clenched his fists. "Your identity is killing her." Torin's expression didn't change. "Then she will join the ancestors with honor. The law remains." Ethan spent the next week digging through every xenocultural database he could access. There had to be a way. Lira was thriving in his care, but every time he looked at her, he saw Serah's face outside his window. He saw a mother being destroyed by a law that made no sense in a modern galaxy. And then he found it. A subsection of Vel'thari family law, rarely invoked. If a blood debtor wished to expand their family line, they could formally adopt another into their household. The adopted individual would share the same legal standing as the debtor. It was intended for marriages, for bringing in spouses, but the language was broad. Ethan sat back, his heart pounding. It was insane. It would never work, but he had to try. He filed the petition that night. The Vel'thari Council responded within hours, and their message was incandescent with rage. A human claiming a Vel'thari adult as family? Impossible. Offensive. A mockery of their culture. They scheduled an emergency hearing, and Ethan knew they planned to humiliate him and shut this down permanently. He didn't care. He contacted Serah and told her what he was attempting. She listened in silence, then asked, "Why would you do this for me?" Ethan looked at Lira, sleeping peacefully in her crib. "Because she needs her mother, and because your people are wrong." The hearing was held in the council chamber, broadcast across Vel'thari networks. Ethan stood alone before the 5 counselors, with Serah seated in the observation area, her face unreadable. Torin spoke first, his voice dripping with contempt. "You dare to claim one of our kind as your subordinate? You understand nothing of our ways." Ethan met his gaze. "I'm not claiming her as a subordinate. I'm offering her a place in my family. In human culture, family isn't just about blood. It's about choice. It's about who you stand beside when everything falls apart. Serah and I both love Lira. That makes us family, whether your law recognizes it or not." Torin leaned forward. "And if we refuse?" Ethan's voice was steady. "Then I'll raise Lira to know that her people valued tradition over love, that they let her mother die rather than bend a single rule. Is that the legacy you want?" The chamber went silent. Torin looked at Serah. "And you? You would accept this human into your lineage? Lower yourself to his claim." Serah stood slowly. Her voice was quiet but clear. "I would accept anything to hold my daughter again. If that makes me weak in your eyes, I do not care. I choose her. I choose family over pride." The council conferred in whispers. Minutes stretched like hours. Finally, Torin spoke. "This is unprecedented. It violates the spirit of our traditions." He paused, and something almost human flickered in his ancient eyes. "But the law permits it. The adoption is recognized. Serah is now bound to the human's family line, and through him, to her daughter." Ethan felt his knees go weak with relief. Serah's face transformed, tears streaming down her silver cheeks. Torin raised one hand. "But understand this, human. You have changed something fundamental today. Our people will not forget." 3 months later, Ethan sat in his Phoenix apartment with Serah and Lira. The little girl was laughing, reaching for both of them with tiny hands. Serah sang to her in the old language, songs of starlight and home. Ethan didn't understand the words, but he understood the love. It turned out that raising a Vel'thari infant required 2 people minimum, and Serah moved into the spare room without hesitation. They were clumsy at first, navigating cultural differences and shared space, but slowly they built something neither had expected. Not a transaction, not an obligation. A real family. News of the case spread across the galactic networks. Other species watched with fascination as humanity once again bent the rules in the name of compassion. The Vel'thari Council remained disapproving, but younger Vel'thari began to question the old laws. If bonds could be chosen, not just inherited, what else might change? Ethan didn't think about legacy or politics. He thought about the moment Serah first held Lira again, the way she whispered thank you in his language, broken and sincere. He thought about the future, about the little girl who would grow up knowing 2 worlds, 2 cultures, and the unshakable truth that love was stronger than any law. The blood debt that should have destroyed them had instead created something unprecedented. A human and a Vel'thari, raising a child together, proving that family wasn't about biology or tradition. It was about showing up. It was about fighting for each other. And humanity, for all its flaws, had always been very good at that.